All right. Thank you for joining us. I know some of you are still signing on. We'll go ahead and get you in. But we have a jam-packed program for you today. We have some really great information. Thank you for joining us. I'm Terry Kimball. I'm President and CEO here at the Chandler Chamber of Commerce. And this program is brought to you in part by the City of Chandler, the Industrial Development Authority. It is because of those partnerships that we have in the community that we are able to bring you these great programs. I have two dynamic speakers for you today. I have Sally Putnam. Sally is with us, joining us. She is a certified financial planner. She started her business right here, her financial planning career in 2004, and quickly discovered a passion for helping clients through difficult times, whether it's divorce, death, or of a loved one, disability, stepping out of the working world into retirement. She is now the founder of Now Financial, a financial services practice that helps clients through these now what do I do moments. So I love that. Sally loves sports, and it can often be found biking, playing volleyball, or just plain working out. She is born and raised in the Denver area and is a Bronco fan. And whether you like Broncos or not, she's an avid fan of her community, which is really more. She's a bigger fan of the community than Broncos, I think. And she's also very active in our chamber, and also volunteers for so many numerous causes, whether it's animals, community-focused nonprofits. Wherever you need volunteers, you'll always find Sally somewhere. So thank you, Sally, for joining us. At this time, I'd also like to introduce Sarah Schmitz. Sarah is a retirement plan consultant with Principal Securities. Sarah has over 20 years of retirement planning consulting and employee benefits experience, as well as a passion in providing employers and employees with ideas and solutions to help them achieve an optimal balance between their objectives and benefits, and also spend through the effective retirement and employee benefit plan, designing tax saving strategies and employee financial wellness. Having worked on each side of the fiduciary triangle for service providers, a Fortune 500 employer, and a plan consultant for a large regional consulting firm, Sarah possesses a unique combination of perspectives, bringing the large employer best practices, benefit design strategies, and retirement plan consulting to medium and small businesses. Boy, she's the whole package too. So please help me in welcoming Sarah. And I can't wait. I know that I got to see a sneak preview of this a couple weeks ago, and I really enjoyed this information, and I hope that our audience does too as well. So you've done a lot of involvement in putting this together, so I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it from here.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to kind of kick us off here. Sarah's going to get the presentation on the screen here. Just let me know if you're having any trouble getting that. I actually received some information from, I believe it was the Arizona Chamber, about how businesses were doing during this pandemic. And looking at the numbers, I had shared some of this with Sarah, and then she sent me this information from that Principal had conducted, and I thought it was enlightening, and I also thought it was very encouraging, because some of the information that we got just in Arizona was not maybe as well reflected as what this survey actually shows, and I just thought it was a little bit more uplifting, and I certainly thought that there were lots of opportunities that we could see here in this survey. I want to tell you a little bit about how this survey, where it was gathered, where the information has come from. Principal Financial actually did the survey. They went and they interviewed companies from anywhere from 2 to 10,000 employees. So we have pretty much the gamut of a small business up to a larger business. They have 20%. You can kind of see there. It's designed to be evenly represented. So there's 20% in each of the categories as far as the number of employees, small, medium, and large. It also is equally weighted throughout the country so that we have good representation. We're not having numbers that are skewed by maybe the Southwest or by the East, what have you. And then also by industry, you can see that there are, again, representative in the industry pretty much compared to how the business industry itself is represented. So that we have, you know, obviously we know that the businesses that have been hit so hard in this, of course, are the retail, and I think what we have it in the leisure and hospitality, which is the restaurants and of course the hotels. So they are represented in here according to the size of their percentage of business worldwide, or not worldwide, nationwide. And then it also goes through, because Principal, of course, is a financial services industry, and also because we're coming out of a employee-driven market now into an employer-driven, meaning that this time last year we were having a hard time finding employees that would work because, you know, they could get 25 cents more an hour, or they could get a little bit more benefit somewhere else, and it was a little bit harder as a business owner, especially a smaller business owner, to compete with some of that. So they've also reflected in here some of the benefits that these companies are offering to their employees as well. The respondents have been the decision makers, so it's not you know, just the sales rep that's answering the question, or somebody that might not have that expertise. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Sarah to kick us off on the information that we have here, and hopefully you guys will find some good positive information.
All right. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
All good? All right. Well, this financial well-being index was a survey done in June of 2020, basically the week of June 4th and June 11th. 500, just a little over 500 business owners responded. And you already saw and heard from Sally that it was your key decision makers that were responding to this. It wasn't, the receptionist at the front desk. They went to either the business owner themselves, or the CEO, CFO, or the executive in finance or HR. So these folks know the conditions or the current economic impact to their business and their employee base. And so I think you've got some really good data here, because you've got people that are more than qualified to respond on the financial conditions of their business. And that's really what this survey is about. It's like, hey, business owner, what's your state of mind? Are you in a New York state of mind, which doesn't look so great for if you live in New York? Or do you have a more positive outlook? And I think if you get outside of places like the big cities like New York City, for example, the sentiment is different than what you might hear on some of the media, whether that's on cable news or some other channel that you tune into. So just in light of COVID-19, this particular survey just really wanted to figure out what's your state of your business now, your current financial health, as compared to, let's say, a year ago. And then we do a deeper look at the small to medium-sized business market, which is defined as 200 to 500 employees, or just under 500 employees. And then we just kind of wanted to find out, okay, what are you feeling now? Just like Sally's business kind of echoes, now what? Now you've got this COVID-19 thing happening, and what does your future look like? Is it bright? Is it dim? Are you going to be able to make it? And I think you'll be surprised at some of the responses here, especially the percentages of folks that are saying, hey, I'm going to not just make it, I might actually be just fine compared to a year ago, or I may even be growing. So we'll show you some of those stats, and you can see for yourself in the numbers. There's no question, as some of you have probably already figured out, if in your own businesses and your own careers, you've had to adapt very quickly to what COVID-19 has done to our economy, whether it's working remote or always having a supply of masks on hand in your car whenever you step outside to go to the grocery store or what have you. But I think employers are figuring out, okay, we can work around this if we've embraced technology. So I think you'll see, most of the firms that are in the technology sector, they're doing well, right? They're going to be okay. And in fact, their growth in their business has probably had an uptick. So the question here on this particular state of business is, how have your financials changed compared to last year at this time? So that was the question. And another indicator is, how much cash do you have? I mean, if you don't have any cash to make payroll, you're in dire straits. So they just took a look at their cash position and asked them that question as well. And just basically asked them to say, is it improved? Is it okay? It stayed the same, or has it worsened? And what I found kind of a positive thing here is that the majority, over 2/3 are saying, you know what, it stayed the same or it's improved as far as our financials. The cash on hand is an interesting stat. That's obviously gone down in light of COVID-19. So your days of cash on hand has gone from 107 on average to 88. Which is no surprise. I think a lot of the legislation that was passed, which we'll see some of those questions asked later in this material through the CARES Act, whether that was the PPP or the EIDL or some of those other bridge loans, how has that helped you kind of get through this phase, if you will, and get through the tunnel? There's light at the end of the tunnel. How do we get there? And I think that legislation has helped, which you'll see some stats on that too. Only 1 in 10 of businesses surveyed said that they were struggling or declining. So said in another way, that's 9 out of 10 said they aren't struggling or declining. So that's a positive thing. 41% say they're actually growing, and almost half said they were stable, like we're holding steady. So, less than, 10% is struggling to stay afloat. 8% said they were declining. So that's a positive response based on the financial health of their business. And I think if we can kind of keep that mentality through the next 12 months, you may even see some of these that said they were declining or struggling. You know what? They changed their answer to maybe I'm going to make it. I'm stable. I'll get there. The next particular slide just talks about how do you rank concerns based on the present moment in light of COVID-19. What's the number one concern? I mean, this is no surprise. The economic impact of COVID-19 was the number one concern. The other piece that I thought was interesting here is, how do we protect our employees' health? Because you need workers to continue to help grow your business, which addresses the third item, growing your revenue. That's another concern. And then, the last thing that's kind of, listed as a concern is the cost of healthcare. I think you'll see in some of the information we presented here, they're maintaining their benefits because they know they need to provide benefits to keep their employees and to keep their business going. The office culture is kind of a funny thing. Some people enjoy working from home. You have some folks that say, I really miss, the interaction. So depending probably on what industry you're in, that answer will be, widely vary depending on what sector you're in. Obviously the hospitality industry, they need people to go out and socialize, right? And continue to do business that way. And if you're able to work from home and not have to go out, I think that's going to impact a lot of those industries that rely on people getting out and about. How has your business changed its staffing? That was another question as far as the state of business. And the number one reason if their staffing changed was obviously because of COVID-19. Only 22% said they decreased their staff, and 9% just reduced from full-time to part-time or went to a temporary furlough. So the nice piece of news here is that 38% said they maintained their staff, and 38% said they increased staff. And they break it down for you there down below with, increase to full-time, part-time, or some combination of a contract temp employee. So that's another piece of good news I think that we should focus on here is people are holding tight with their staff. They're not, making huge layoffs. There's a few industries obviously that don't have a choice. If you look at hospitality, for example, that would be one area where you'll see probably some layoffs and people aren't able to get back to work because the demand is not there. The next question is really, so tell us how things that your company has done to react to the pandemic. Obviously, it's one thing to just keep your staff, but are you going to increase your hiring? Most people just said, we'll just stop hiring. Any jobs that we had posted, we're taking off the table, and we're going to try to modify with the staff that we have and either retrain them or, change their benefits in some way. 32% looked for other ways to cut expense versus laying off. So overall, if you just kind of give a high level overview of what this is really getting after, is that 68% are considering alternative ways before letting their staff go. So either tweaking benefits or applying for more funding, what have you, before they cut people off and send them on their way into the unemployment line. All right, I'll just stop right here. Are there any questions I'm missing or anyone want to ask? I don't know that I can see the chat feature, but maybe Sally.
We had one question.
We'll go ahead and take the questions at the end.
Okay.
But one of the questions was, we'll just take them at the end and then you can address them.
Okay. All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
We'll keep rolling then. All right, now let's focus on just the SMB market, because mostly what Sally and I have come across are the small to medium-sized business owner. We don't usually come across businesses that are huge because they're typically working with huge consulting firms. And what I think is nice about this particular survey is that's kind of Principal's wheelhouse in that they're able to tap into a lot of the small to medium-sized businesses that they already serve. So they're already customers in their book of business, if you will, and they're able to really kind of get a closer insight on what's happening in that SMB market. So SMB is, again, just defined as under 500 employees. And again, the financial question was presented to them specifically. So this is breaking it down just for that SMB market. And again, the question was, how have your business financials changed for this year compared to last year at this time? 37% of the businesses reported that their financials have improved significantly, which I found surprising. I was like, wow, okay, that's really, really good news. The other thing that you could say here is 2/3, if you add up, stayed the same plus improved or improved significantly. Their financials are the status quo or better. So that's a nice stat to take away from this survey. You've got some that say about 1/4 that said that, it's worsened, and then about 12% that said it's worsened significantly. So what would be nice to know from this survey, from the SMB market particularly, is what industries were those in? And I have a hunch you'll see that it's the hospitality and some of those that are tied to, travel and that sort of thing. If you look at the current state of their business financials, again, kind of asking them, describe your business state as far as your financials go. 34% are growing, 53% said stable, only 10% said declining, and 3% said struggling to stay afloat. So that's even better news than what we saw in the overall survey. And then if you look at the larger employer and how does that compare, you've got, 40% stable, 53% growing, and then 1% struggling to stay afloat and 6% declining. So 89% of small businesses, another question that came out of this, would not consider filing for bankruptcy. So almost 90% of your SMB in this particular survey said, we will not file for bankruptcy, we will not be going out of business, we're gonna hang on for as long as we can here. And thanks to, I think, some of the legislation that passed, that's helped them. But it just goes to show you, I think the SMB market is the backbone of the United States. I mean, a lot of small businesses need a lot of great employees to kind of get them to the next level, and they're relying on that American worker to deliver it for them. Top 5 ways that small businesses, in comparison to maybe the overall larger employer, are reacting is, again, they've stopped hiring. They're looking for other ways to cut the budget, whether that's travel expenses or, entertainment, what have you. 26% actually did apply for the U.S. Paycheck Protection Program. 21% laid off staff, and then only 1 out of 5, 19% temporarily closed the business. I think that was maybe similar to some of the things that your survey that you conducted there at the chamber also kind of reflected that you had maybe even more than 1 out of 5, but it may have been higher. But we've got a good result here from over 300 SMB employers saying, we just temporarily closed, but we're not going to shut down completely. We've got to wait either for legislation to allow us to reopen, or they need to see a reduction in the number of cases or whatever the rules are that are set by their state. Less than 10% are considering reducing their employee benefits. So I think that again goes back to SMBs, small to medium-sized businesses, need that American worker, and one of the things that they look to from their employer, other than just cash compensation, is benefits. How do I support myself and my family, and how do I continue to work for a smaller employer versus going to work for a larger company that may have richer benefits. And so I think you'll see that in some of the responses to the SMB market. What are some things that we're tweaking? They may be adding some voluntary benefits that will help their employees kind of manage their work-life balance. Next up is just, how has your staffing changed? And again, COVID-19, 38%, they were impacted by that. But what's interesting here is 83% of the small businesses have been able to either maintain or increase their staff. So well over, 4 out of, every 4 out of 5 or 8 out of 10, however you want to say it, they are able to maintain their staff. And then if you look at the turnover, what percent of the staff permanently left? Either they voluntarily quit, or they were terminated, or they changed jobs, or they retired, or they were laid off. 1 to 10% of them surveyed said, it was, 40% due to those reasons. And then you've got kind of those other ranges there that are smaller in number. But the percent of employee turnover was in that 1 to 10% range due to voluntary terminations or layoffs and that sort of thing. Over 1/3 of the small businesses surveyed had applied for some sort of federal assistance. So here's kind of a breakdown. You've heard probably about some of this legislation, and it's hard to keep it all straight, but you have the PPP and the EIDL and the SBA and the lending program. So what's the splits based on that as far as getting federal assistance in that SMB space? And a lot of them, of course, qualified for the PPP, because you did have to have under 500 lives to even qualify for that. And then 9% went to the economic injury disaster loan route, and then 12% through the Express Bridge Loan Program, and then 6% through the U.S. Chamber's Main Street Lending Program. So how they reacted is, of course, leveraging some of those things that came about through the CARES Act and other legislation. 70% of those employers are using that assistance, whether it be from PPP or EIDL or what have you, and are using it for payroll, and 58% are investing in their employee benefits. And I think what employers, if they're working with someone that really understands how employee benefits can give them a competitive edge without spending a lot of dollars, that really, really helps. They're using, the assistance for employee health care benefits specifically, that 45%. But then if you look further down, you've got 13% that are using it for other employee benefits. And that includes things like, critical illness insurance and offering those types of things. Disability insurance, life insurance. A lot of those employee benefits don't cost them a lot, but it's just a peace of mind for that employee to know that they have a route to go. So I think for the SMB market, if they're not already leveraging those types of things, they could be doing that to gain an edge and to keep their employee base in place. All right, with that, I'll just stop. Sally, do you have anything you want to add or anything you want to comment on before we go into now what kind of a question? Like, what's the future hold?
No, I don't really have a whole lot here. I know we're a little bit on time, but also I wanted to let everyone know that if you want a copy of the presentation, just let us know. We'll get one out to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun charts and stats to look at, and even in the appendix to go back to, who's in this survey, because that may be of real interest to you, especially if you're looking at the different industries that are represented compared to maybe the survey that you facilitated there out of the chamber. This next section, our last section, is really talking about the now what. You know, what does your future look like? Does it look bright? Does it look dim? Will you be able to make it? And kind of what's your time frame for, if you think you'll make it, how much time do you think that's going to take? So this next question is, how long do you think it will take your business to fully recover from the impacts of COVID-19? And so the good news here, that first number that jumps out at me, if it doesn't jump out at you, is 66%, 2/3 of those surveyed said within the next year. And it ranges from within the next 3 months, within the next 6 months, within the next 9 months. I think you'll see a lot of variation to this based on, okay, let's get through the election. I think maybe that's kind of the time frame for that 3 to 6 month period. And then the 9 months is, okay, now if we have a change in the guard, so to speak, in our Congress, what will that look like for me and my business? And then you've got just a few outliers out there that said, it's going to take 2 or more years, or only 2% said, which is positive, my business will probably never fully recover. And so I think this is positive, even though there's some folks in here that are like, yeah, it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to fully recover. But the majority of everyone surveyed said within 2 years, they're going to get there. It's just going to take some more time. And I think as we learn more about the pending vaccine that's potentially on the horizon, hopefully by Q4, you'll see maybe some even modifications to this response. How would you describe, this question is really about how do you describe your company's sentiment? So how do you feel about the economic outlook for the next 12 months? So what I think is another way to say kind of what this particular stat shows you is you've got almost 80% saying they're cautiously optimistic if you add up those percentages. So 40% are cautious, 39% are optimistic, that's 79%. And you've got some people that are just kind of neutral. They don't really say one way or the other. Only 14% are pessimistic. So I think that's a positive that you can take away from the next 12 months. I think most people, most business owners are really, really hoping that the next 12 months is a little bit brighter than what we've seen in the last 6 months. Just for reference, more than 1/3 of businesses applied for and were approved for that federal assistance that we talked about. So that's helping them kind of get through this next 12 months. I think if you see some of the additional legislation kind of pass down the way, attitudes again might change. But if you want to really look at the breakdown of, how long did it take you to get the PPP or the EIDL, those stats are in here, and you can kind of see what the turnaround time was for that. 66% of employers are using those benefits, that assistance from the federal government for payroll purposes, so just to make payroll. But 62% are investing in their employee benefits. So again, that goes back to, okay, is there a smarter way for me to take that money and retain my employee base so that I don't lose my employees when hopefully we're through the pandemic and things are completely, hopefully, back to normal. 70% of those employers with under 500 employees, so that's that SMB market, we're using this for payroll. And then I think if you look at the overall number of that 500 that were surveyed, it's actually 68%. It's not 66, 68%. And that's compared to 49% of businesses with a 500 to 10,000 employees. So that's how they're using it. I think that's what's interesting to me is, okay, there were some stipulations, if you recall, for some of those federal assistance programs. You couldn't use, more than 75% for payroll or compensation for executives or the business owner. So there were some stipulations on that, as well as, your overall overhead for running the office, whether that was rent or utilities. Last but not least, more than 40% of the employers simply just don't want to reopen and go back to the norm until they know that their employees are safe, because, I think, if I'm a business owner, I'm a little concerned that if I have an employee that gets upset with me because they potentially contracted COVID, I don't want to put myself in a situation where I have to be in a defense mode where I'm sued for some reason. So I think that's why you'll see a lot of companies just kind of hesitating a little bit about, returning to work as they were before COVID-19 happened. 36% are regulated, and of course they want to comply with the state law. I know here in Colorado, which is where we've had a lot of attention on a Castle Rock restaurant. Sally, I don't know if you remember that, but there was a Castle Rock restaurant that was open for Mother's Day because they just wanted to give everyone Mother's Day brunch, and they ended up getting shut down by the state. So when state and local regulations allow me to do so, that's when we'll reopen. So 36% responded in that way. And then you've got a number of other factors that come up, whether it's the federal government. I know that they have a lot of impact on like the banking business and what's allowed as far as customers coming into, the business or the lobby of the bank. So some interesting information there about, what's your level of comfort for recovery. And then a lot of larger employers are having to invest in, additional sanitation and cleaning practices. And of course, I can speak to principal. Their entire administrative support staff is working remotely. They did not renew their leases in some of the regional office hubs, whether that was in Spokane, Washington, or in Iowa or in Nebraska. So they're all working from home now, and they've all adapted, and that's now a permanent thing. So you'll see commercial real estate, I think, take a huge hit as a result of that, as how they've changed and pivoted into kind of a new way of life in the workplace. All right, any questions so far other than what we've gone over? Are there more questions on the chat feature that we can address, or?
I know that some people have asked for the presentation, and we'll go ahead and get that out as Sally indicated immediately following. And then the other question was, when was the survey taken? 1 out of 10 businesses say that they're struggling. And I know that Sally had responded June 4th to June 11th.
Yes.
And I think that you're also, we've been conducting these roundtable discussion groups with businesses. And I think you're seeing that kind of ebbs and flows. And as people get more money in their pocket and they feel more confident, you're seeing this. So everything that you're stating is right on from what we are hearing from our Chandler businesses. So this is great information. Thank you.
Yeah. This last slide here is just really talking about employee benefits. So we kind of hinted at this earlier. You can pay employees cash compensation, but you can also tweak your employee benefits offering to stay competitive or be the employer of choice. And I think with COVID-19, you'll see that a lot of employers, if they didn't already offer a mental or health well-being program, like an EAP, employee assistance program, they will be increasing that. Very few, I think, would be decreasing that, but you've got to be able to offer some sort of avenue for employees to go to vent, whether that's about their spouse, their kids, or their boss, or coworkers, or whatever it might be, right? Depending on how many people they work with. The healthcare benefits, you'll see that there's actually some that are planning to increase their healthcare benefits, but the majority are going to keep them, almost 70% no change. What I would point out here is you've got a lot of folks that may be looking at tweaking some of the other benefits, what we call ancillary benefits that aren't your typical, medical, dental, vision, such as critical illness, life insurance, disability insurance, and even retirement benefits. They're looking at not changing, but maybe even increasing. And how can we do that without taking a huge hit to our bottom line? And so if you ever want some insights on that, we have a ton of resources through Sally and myself. We can get you some great options for looking at, how you could help business owners evaluate all that. All right, this is again the methodology. So for those of you that were asking, when was this done? This kind of recaptures that. It wasn't a long survey, it was only 10 minutes. And again, the breakdown by size of companies based on employee headcount. And then you've got just over 500, I think it was 506 total respondents. And it excluded government and non-for-profit organizations. So this is your true for-profit, small to medium-sized business owner that was included in this survey.
I think one of the things to bring up is that small business owners, it's nice to see that last year and maybe the past couple of years where cash was king, right? Everybody those employees just wanted that extra $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever was out there. I think that last page, Sarah, if you'll go to 22 again, that last page is kind of, maybe it's not 22, the other one, 23, where it goes through that now all of a sudden the focus of the employees, of the workers might have changed a little bit, where I start now to see that there's more, my employer cares about me as opposed to, my employer is a paycheck. So
Yeah.
Observation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that would also address the culture, right? So if you're, used to just going into work every day and you collect your paycheck every other Friday or every, the 15th and end of the month, now you have a situation where, okay, you're giving me flexibility to possibly work from home, but I'm also going to give you some additional incentives through these other benefits to take care of you while you work from home. And maybe it's flexible hours, maybe you don't have to be on point from 8 to 5, but I think a lot of employee benefits that have been underutilized will now be more utilized in lieu of just paying more cash out the door. So,
Sarah, I want to, one of the things that came up, and we've been doing these weekly seminars to be able to help businesses and so forth, is to remind people that, because I know sometimes, especially as employees are cutting back on expenses and so forth, and really being mindful during these times, that it's not to give up and not to invest in your 401ks and so forth, because that's really important, to also continue as the bigger picture to keep the economy going.
Yeah, I think for those that maybe got a little nervous in March, they were maybe worried about another 08, 09 where they took a huge hit, and they learned their lesson. What took maybe 24 months, 36 months after that to see a nice rebound, but you had to hang in there. If you cashed out, you basically you locked in your losses that you were seeing on paper. And so I think a lot of employees, if they lived through that 08, 09 experience, they learn their lesson and they're like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take my money out. I'm going to stay the course. And, we have been, I don't want to say preaching that, but trying to message that consistently every month to employees and employers that we work with. And it is, how do you manage your account when there's market volatility like this? And, we're hoping obviously for that V recovery that we've seen. I've done a lot of, and this is with Sally included, is a lot of reviews of individuals' accounts, but also employer plan accounts, their overall plan health. What's it look like? And we're seeing that, asset levels are back to where they were. Performance is, you're almost flat from where you were from, end of March. And you may even see an uptick with employees putting more in because they want to take advantage of the tax savings, because they're looking to position themselves as best as they possibly can. And I think you'll see a lot of employees investing in themselves. So that message has hopefully gotten across to a lot of folks. So yeah,
Right.
Good point. I think that's important to reiterate.
One other comment then, and just since you're sharing this information, I do know that I spoke with Maricopa County, and then I spoke briefly with Micah yesterday regarding the city's I Choose Chandler program. You talked about in the beginning about companies getting some of these relief funds and so forth, whether it's PPP or EIDL or whatever. The two grant programs, especially the Maricopa County one, I just got a report on that the other day. And just in Chandler alone, they were able to give out $2.6 million to Chandler businesses. That
That's
is
awesome.
huge. And
Yeah.
I know Micah's been, I think it was up over 400 businesses that have applied for that I Choose Chandler. That parameters are a little bit different. But again, the city has, I think, just over $9.5 million to be able to give out. So those programs are working, and I think you're seeing that in consumer confidence too as well.
All right, were there any other questions or comments from the attendees?
I know you got a couple more slides just to finish up, and we'll let you go ahead and do that, and then we'll open it back up.
Yeah. So yeah, we kind of left off on this one. This is the methodology. And when we initially just introduced it, again, this is the respondents and how they break down. And Sally went over this, I think, in pretty good detail. Again, the emphasis here is that the respondents' roles were, they're the owner themselves or some sort of executive from HR, finance, or, the CEO, CFO. So it's people that are definitely in tune with their business and they know what's happening from a financial aspect, but also from an employee perspective, because they have their pulse on their employee base.
Great.
Is there anything else that you guys have any questions on or want to see? This is really all the information that we have. I just thought it was a little bit more uplifting than some of the stuff I've seen. And I think it's just a matter of, I think some of it's just a focus. We're focusing sometimes on where the pain is, and we get that and we understand that, and it's just a matter of, how do we survive? Terry, when you were talking about like the 401k and as many of you probably know, there were some leniencies given by the IRS on 401k option to access 401ks, and that were not typical. They were given for just a small period of time, and we've seen not that many participants actually taking advantage of that, which is telling us that the American consumer is doing okay. They might not be thriving, they might not feel fantastic, but they're not drowning like we saw in earlier times in 2008 and 9.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll speak to that too. Before COVID-19, it's all kind of been glossed over or clouded by some of the other stuff that's been a result of COVID-19. The CARES Act, for example, the Secure Act, which was passed in December of 2019. I've seen a lot of small to medium-sized business that were thinking about maybe modifying their benefits. They're adding retirement plans. They didn't have them in place before. They just kind of did the basic stuff, whether it was medical and dental, and that was it. They're adding retirement plans because for the most part, that legislation, the Secure Act, allows them to write it off completely. They get a tax credit, and it doesn't cost them anything to establish a plan, and they get a tax credit over the next 3 years. So, for small and medium-sized businesses that, want to maybe position themselves a little bit better than the competing business down the road, that is one thing that they're able to do, and it's pretty affordable, especially if you can write most of the expense off. So,
great. Well, again, this has been fantastic information, and I love data like this to be able to take a look at this. I think that as we continue to move forward, this is really good information and gives people hope. I had briefly mentioned on each one of these each week, and those of you, I apologize, those of you that keep joining us each week, but there are still programs out there for money for your business. If you have not applied, please go to our business resource page. Whether it's the Maricopa County one, the I Choose Chandler, they have it for PPE, as well as for financing, or for up to the $10,000, $1,300 per individual employee. The Maricopa County one is $25,000. So please make sure that you are applying for those. We're also working with the City of Chandler on a new program with some PPE distribution that I keep telling you about. We're almost ready to be able to release that. So watch out for that on our weekly programs here. I also want to mention next week, Kyle Pearsall with Wells Fargo is going to give us an update on how to adapt and rebuild during COVID. And then he's going to give insights on business strategies and connections. And this will be one of a two-part series. So again, we're bringing you these experts for you to ask these questions to making sure that we are keeping you informed. So again, I want to do a shout out to Sally and Sarah. Again, thank you for joining us. This is great information.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and all of the participants today will also get you out this PowerPoint that was presented so that you have that. And then we'll see you next week, same time, 10 o'clock here. And just another thank you to the City of Chandler, the Industrial Development Authority for helping to make these programs possible. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you same time next week.
Thank you.